Be careful not to knock anything over, dear. That glass is worth more than his monthly salary," whispered the platinum-haired woman as Kesha poured champagne at the head table of the Metropolitan Hotel in Manhattan. The high-pitched laughter echoed among the guests. The kind of laughter that cuts to the soul because it assumes you're too small to matter. Kesha was 25 years old, worked 3 jobs to support her 4-year-old daughter and her simple appearance. Basic black uniform, curly hair pulled back into a discreet bun, made her practically invisible to those people. The ballroom sparkled with baccarat, crystal, and Italian marble. Every detail screaming wealth. The center table held the $8 billion merger agreement that dominated the evening's conversation. Richard Whitmore, the billionaire host, presided over the table with the authority of someone who never had to prove his worth. Round him, executives, shareholders, and lawyers celebrated what would be the biggest deal of the year in the technology sector. Kesha was just a waitress there to serve drinks and disappear. But when her eyes caught a specific clause in the contract, she froze. She approached his side, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Whitmore, don't sign that." What happened next left the entire room in absolute silence. Kesha didn't seem to belong in that world. Her beauty was natural, without elaborate makeup or expensive jewelry, just a serene face that carried a quiet dignity. She had grown up in the Bronx, raised by her grandmother, who cleaned offices at night and taught her that education was the only inheritance no one could steal from her. People looked at her and saw someone out of place, someone who should know his place. But Kesha had never been invisible. She never had been. "Excuse me, did you say something?" asked a gray-haired shareholder, her voice dripping with condescension. "Because I'm sure I didn't hear a waitress giving her opinion on billion-dollar businesses." The table erupted in laughter. A woman in a flashy red dress covered her mouth with her hand, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. How embarrassing. Someone should explain to her how these things work. A man with a thin mustache shook his head. She probably can't even read these documents properly. She should be in the kitchen, not here. Kesha continued serving, her hands steady, her face impassive. She owed them no explanation. As she moved on to the next table, a young woman in a gold dress turned to her friend. "Look at the state of her shoes. She clearly has no business being here." Her companion laughed. "I bet she came to pick up leftovers to take home." The words hit her like slaps, but Kesha didn't stop. She adjusted a napkin with precise movements, as if anchoring herself against the storm of cruelty. Some guests turned to watch, waiting to see her break. She didn't break. The contract remained in the center of the table like the trophy of the night. Billions of dollars, entire companies, all boiled down to pages of incomprehensible legal text. Whitmore watched everything with his calculating eyes, the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to be respected. When Kesha refilled a glass, her eyes returned to the document. Her breath almost stopped. There it was, a reverse transfer clause buried in the middle of the legalese. Her late father, Professor Marcus Johnson, had taught her about it years ago. "It's a trap, daughter," he had said, sitting at his desk cluttered with books when she was a teenager. "It seems harmless, but it can destroy an empire in 30 days. His father had been a leading authority on behavioral economics, the kind of man banks consulted in times of crisis. He died when Kesha was 17, leaving behind only his books and handwritten notes. She had read everything, every page, until the words became part of her. Without hesitation, she approached Whitmore. "Don't sign that." The room erupted in hysterical laughter. The lead lawyer, adjusting his glasses, leaned forward. "Who do you think you are to interrupt billionaires?" Her voice dripped with contempt. As the laughter grew, "She must think she's in a movie," said a woman with huge earrings to her companion, laughing loudly, saving the day like a heroine. An executive with a gold chain around his neck snorted. "This is adult conversation." Go do his job? The whispers grew, turning Kesha into a joke. The manager, a nervous man with a fake smile, rushed over to her. Kesha, what are you doing? You're causing a scene. She didn't look at him. His eyes remained fixed on Whitmore, who now watched her with a curious expression, as if seeing her for the first time. Her hands clenched the tray, but her voice remained calm. Transfer of all parent company assets within 30 days. She pointed to the contract with a steady finger. Asterisk, the laughter stopped. Abruptly, there in front of all the contemptuous stares, she stood firm, like someone guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before the right time. If this story of prejudice touched him, subscribe to the channel to find out how a moment of humiliation would turn into a lesson that this elite would never forget. A shareholder with gold-rimmed glasses quickly flipped through the pages, her forehead wrinkling as she read. Her fingers stopped abruptly on the line Kesha had pointed to. "My God," she muttered, her voice almost inaudible. "What is it?" asked Whitmore, leaning forward. She's right," stammered the shareholder, her face draining of color. "Complete. Transfer of assets within 30 days of signing. That would leave us with nothing." The silence that followed was deafening, but it lasted only seconds before the room exploded in furious denial. "Impossible," shouted the lead lawyer, snatching the document from the shareholder's hands. "A waitress can't understand contracts that took me weeks to review." Her in the red dress laughed contemptuously. "Are you really taking a maid seriously? She probably didn't even finish high school." The burly executive slammed his fist on the table. "This is ridiculous. We're allowing AA." He hesitated, but his eyes said it all. A random person to sabotage a billion-dollar deal. Kesha remained motionless, but inside she felt every word like a stab. It wasn't the first time she had faced this. From her childhood in the Bronx, when teachers assumed she couldn't keep up with advanced classes, to jobs where she was consistently underestimated. Her grandmother, Dorothy, always said, "Honey, let them think you're small. When they show you who they really are, you'll be 10 steps ahead." The hotel manager appeared at her side, whispering urgently, "Kesha, you need to stop this. You're going to lose your job, and you could even be sued for interfering with guest relations." She nodded silently, but didn't move. His eyes remained fixed on the contract as memories flooded her mind. She was 14 when her father came home frustrated after discovering that a family had lost everything because they didn't understand a similar clause. "People are being cheated every day by these contracts, Kesha," he had said, opening his books on the kitchen table. "They use complicated words to hide the traps. That's why you need to learn to read between the lines." For years, even after he died. In a car accident when she was 17, Kesha continued to study her notes. She worked during the day as a cleaning lady in offices, but at night she devoured books on economics, business law, anything she could find at the public library. When she became pregnant at 21, many thought she would give up her studies. Instead, she studied while her daughter slept, memorizing complex concepts between midnight feedings. "Miss," said a man in a pinstripe suit, her voice dripping with condescension, "I admire your initiative, but this is a job for qualified professionals. Perhaps you should go back to your job." The platinum-haired woman nodded to a colleague. "See, that's exactly why I always say certain people should know his place. Imagine if everyone started giving their opinion on serious business matters." "It's embarrassing," whispered another executive. "Imagine if this leaked to the press. Billionaires halt merger because Waitress had an opinion. It would be humiliating." Kesha felt something burn in her chest. Not exactly anger, but an iron determination that came from years of being underestimated. She remembered the time a client treated her like she was invisible while discussing investment strategies she knew were completely wrong, or when a lawyer talked about her as if she weren't there, assuming she wouldn't understand basic legal terms. every insult, every look of disdain. Every time someone treated her as less capable because of her appearance or social status had fueled a flame inside. His 4-year-old daughter, Brooklyn, would be raised in a different world. A world where a black girl from the suburbs could speak up and be heard. "Listen," Whitmore finally said, her voice cutting through the hubbub. "Regardless of who noticed. At first, we need to understand if there really is something problematic with this contract." The opposing lawyer, a thin man with a thin mustache, forced a laugh. "Richard, don't tell me you're considering canceling an $8 billion deal because of this." He gestured vaguely toward Kesha. "She doesn't even know how to use a calculator properly," sneered a woman with extravagant jewelry. "How could she possibly understand complex corporate structures?" But Kesha noticed something the others didn't. Whitmore was actually reading the clause now, his eyes scanning each word with growing concern. And he wasn't the only one. 2 other shareholders had leaned forward to examine the document, her expressions gradually changing from contempt to unease. She knew that look. It was the same look she saw on her father's face when he discovered a legal trap, the same expression she herself had when she recognized the pattern in those pages. For a moment, when she saw Whitmore pause on a specific line, her breath almost stopped. He had found the second clause, the one she hadn't mentioned yet, the one that would turn the problem from catastrophic to apocalyptic, each new attempt to silence or only strengthen. Something inside Kesha that his oppressors couldn't see? A silent force fueled by the very injustice they were trying to impose. What those privileged people didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing her own sentence, and the final judgment was closer than anyone could imagine. While the lawyers furiously argued the validity of the clause, Kesha discreetly removed his cell phone from his apron pocket. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed a quick message. "Professor Williams, I need to confirm something urgent about reverse transfer contracts. It's about those cases that my father documented." The reply came within seconds. "Kesha, where are you? Those contracts are extremely rare and dangerous. I'll call you in 5 minutes." Dr. Marcus Williams had been his father's best friend and research colleague at the university. When Professor Johnson died, Williams became a father figure to Kesha, secretly helping her with her self-taught studies. He knew she had inherited not only her father's books, but also her genius for spotting financial traps. "Miss," said a harsh voice behind her. It was the lead lawyer on the merger, Dr. Harrison Beck, a man who charged $1,000 an hour and made no secret of his disdain. "Would you mind putting your phone away during a serious discussion? Some of us have billions at stake here." "Sorry," Kesha muttered, putting his phone away, but his eyes remained fixed on the contract. Scanning lines that the others had completely ignored her, the woman in the red dress rolled her eyes dramatically. "See, she can't even keep her attention focused. Typical of people who don't understand the magnitude of what's happening here." "She's probably texted the woman in the red dress." Emboldened by the lead lawyer's scorn, rolled her eyes dramatically. "See, she can't even keep her attention focused. Typical of people who don't understand the magnitude of what's happening here." An executive in a gold tie, swirling his brandy, sneered. "She's probably texting her boyfriend, telling him how she saved a billionaire today. It'll be the talk of her cleaning ladies group." Laughter, thinner and more nervous than before, rippled around the table. Kesha was no longer listening. Her mind was a vortex, processing the information flooding from Williams and cross-referencing it with the photographic memory she had of the contract's pages. It wasn't just a problematic clause. It was a complete, meticulously designed asset stripping scheme that would not only hollow out Whitmore Industries, but would also implicate it in international money laundering. The $8 billion wasn't a purchase price. It was a cleverly disguised influx of dirty money that would then be cleaned through Whitmore's legitimate assets before being siphoned away. leaving him personally liable for billions in debt. Her phone vibrated again, a silent earthquake in her apron pocket. Williams had sent 3 more messages in rapid succession. Article: The Singapore shell game, reverse transfers, and the collapse of Ethelred manufacturing. Case study, Vancouver 2017. Unpacking the Henderson Vance laundering operation, Kasha. The pattern is identical. The clause on page 63 is the trigger. The one on page 117, subsection B, is the poison pill. It ties his personal assets to the company's new, fraudulent debt. They'll take his house, his art, everything. I'm 10 minutes away. Stall them, page 117, subsection B. Her eyes, seemingly downcast in submission, scanned the table. The contract was now in the hands of Dr. Beck, who was theatrically flipping through it with a dismissive air. "Mr. Whitmore," Kesha said, her voice cutting through the lingering snickers. It wasn't loud, but it carried a new, unshakable authority that made the room fall quiet again. All eyes turned to her. "Could you please ask Dr. Beck to turn to page 117, subsection B?" Dr. Beck froze, his fingers gripping the document. His face, previously flushed with indignation, paled slightly. "This is absurd. I will not be instructed by page 117. Harrison Whitmore's voice was a low growl. The billionaire's instincts, honed over decades of high-stakes deals, were screaming at him. He was watching a master chess player at work, and she was moving pieces he hadn't even seen on the board. Now, with trembling hands, Beck found the page. His eyes scanned the dense text, his lips moving silently. The color drained completely from his face, leaving a ghastly white mask. He swayed on his feet. "What does it say, Beck?" Whitmore demanded, leaning forward, his palms flat on the table. It's a standard debt assumption clause." Beck stammered, but his voice lacked all conviction. "It assigns all debt acquired by the new parent entity, Ether Holdings, back to the original assets of Whitmore Industries, including your personal holdings used as collateral, within 90 days of signing," Kesha stated, her voice flat and precise, as if she were reading from a textbook. Ether Holdings is a shell company, registered in a jurisdiction with no extradition treaty. The $8 billion is a loan, not a purchase price. You'll be personally bankrupt by the end of the quarter. The silence that followed was profound. It was the sound of a billion-dollar house of cards trembling. The woman in the red dress had stopped fanning herself. The man with the gold tie had set his brandy down, untouched. Henderson, the bald acquirer, shot up from his seat. "This is slander. We will sue you for defamation. You have no proof." This is the ranting of a jealous, uneducated, the grand ballroom. Doors burst open, cutting him off. Professor Marcus Williams stood there, not as a frantic academic, but as an avenger. His gray hair was swept back, his eyes blazed with cold fire, and in his hand he held not a briefcase, but a tablet connected to a portable projector. 2 serious-looking men in dark suits flanked him. "Proof." Williams's voice boomed across the silent hall, devoid of its usual warmth. "I have all the proof the U.S. Attorney's Office requires." Without waiting for an invitation, he marched to the front of the room. One of the men with him efficiently connected the projector to the room's main screen. The Whitmore Industries logo was replaced with a cascade of documents. "Ladies and gentlemen," Williams announced, as the first Documenta corporate registration for Ether Holdings in the Cayman Islands flashed on the screen. "My name is Dr. Marcus Williams, Senior Economic Advisor to the Securities and Exchange Commission. For the past 18 months, we have been investigating a sophisticated international ring using fraudulent mergers to launder money for cartels and terrorist organizations." He turned his gaze to Henderson, who looked like he was about to be sick. "The operation you call Project Chimera is over." The screen changed, showing a complex web of financial transactions, all leading back to Henderson and his associates. The $8 billion, Williams continued, originated from 3 separate accounts linked to the Sinaloa cartel. It was funneled through banks in Cyprus and Malta before being dressed up as investment capital. This merger was never about acquiring a company. It was about using Mr. Whitmore's impeccable reputation and assets to clean dirty money and then vanish, leaving him to take the fall. Kesha stood by silently, the waitress uniform now looking like a superhero's disguise. She locked eyes with Henderson, and for the first time, he saw her. Truly saw her. Not as a waitress, but as the architect of his ruin. The hatred in his gaze was pure and venomous. "You," he spat at her. "You have no idea what you've just done. Some very, very dangerous people are going to want to talk to you." Kesha didn't flinch. "Actually, Mr. Henderson, I know exactly what I did. I prevented a great man from being destroyed by a small one. And as for your dangerous friends," she nodded toward the 2 men in suits. The lead agent stepped forward, flashing a badge. "Michael Henderson, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent." As the agent recited the Miranda rights, the second agent moved around the table, placing handcuffs on Dr. Beck and 2 of Henderson's most nervous-looking executives. The room descended into panicked chaos. Guests scrambled away from the accused, as if their corruption were contagious. The platinum-haired woman was openly sobbing, her perfect composure shattered. Whitmore watched, his face a stone mask. But his eyes were on Kesha. He walked over to her, ignoring the federal agents leading his would-be partners away. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice thick with a mixture of awe and confusion. "Kesha Johnson," she said simply. "My father was Professor Marcus Johnson. He was working on a paper about these exact schemes before he died. He called them financial neutron bombs. They leave the structure standing, but wipe out everything inside. Your father. The behavioral economist. I read his work. He was a genius," Whitmore breathed, the pieces falling into place. The hotel manager finally found his voice, scurrying over. "Mr. Whitmore, I am so sorry for this unbelievable scene. Kesha, I don't know what to say." Whitmore held up a hand, silencing him. His eyes never left Kesha. "You're fired," he said to the manager. Then he turned to Kesha. "And you, Ms. Johnson? I have a position open for a director of corporate compliance. The salary is significantly more than you make in 3 jobs. I need someone who can see what my highly paid, qualified professionals so clearly cannot." Before Kesha could answer, a soft chime came from the agent's radio. "Team Alpha confirms simultaneous takedowns in 6 countries. Operation Chimera is a success." Henderson, hearing this, slumped in his handcuffs. All the fight gone out of him. He was finished. The woman in the red dress, her face streaked with mascara, approached Kesha timidly. I'm so sorry," she whispered. "The things I said, ... I had no right." Kesha looked at her, not with triumph, but with a profound, weary sadness. "No," she said softly, "you didn't. But maybe now you'll understand that a uniform doesn't define a mind, and a title doesn't guarantee integrity." As the arrested were led away and the stunned guests began to be interviewed by agents, Kesha finally took a moment. She walked to the service entrance, leaned against the cool wall of the hallway, and let out a long, shuddering breath. The adrenaline was receding, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She pulled out her phone and looked at the home screen. A picture of her 4-year-old daughter, Brooklyn, grinning with a gap-toothed smile. It was for her. All of it. Every late night studying, every condescending remark endured. Every moment. of doubt so that Brooklyn would never have to feel invisible. Professor Williams found her there. "You did it, Kesha. Your father would be so proud." She smiled, a genuine, tired smile. "I just kept my promise to him, Professor." To read between the lines. 6 months later, the story was the stuff of corporate legend. Kesha Johnson, once an invisible waitress, now occupied a corner office on the top floor of Whitmore Tower, with a view that stretched across all of Manhattan. As the new director of compliance, she had purged the company of several other shady deals Whitmore hadn't even known were lurking in his portfolio. Her first act was to create the Marcus Johnson Foundation, scholarship and internship program for gifted students from underserved communities, giving them the opportunities she had to fight for. One afternoon, Whitmore stepped into her office. "New audit from the Thompson Corporation," he said, placing a file on her desk. "My lawyers say it's clean." Kesha gave him a wry smile, the same one she'd given him the night they met. "Let me be the judge of that." She opened the file, her eyes already scanning for the patterns, the hidden traps, the secrets in the spaces between the words. She was no longer invisible. She was a guardian, a secret weapon, and the financial world would never underestimate the quiet, watchful woman in the corner office again. The polished mahogany of her desk felt cool and solid beneath her fingertips. Kesha Johnson, Director of Corporate Compliance for Whitmore Industries, let her gaze travel from the intricate grain of the wood to the panoramic view of Manhattan that stretched beyond her floor-to-ceiling windows. The skyline was a forest of ambition and glass, a world that had once seemed impenetrable. Now, she had a key to the highest floor, 6 months. It felt like a lifetime and the blink of an eye. The Metropolitan Hotel felt like a fever dream, a chaotic, humiliating, and ultimately triumphant night that had cleaved her life into a before and after. A soft knock pulled her from her reverie. "Ms. Johnson, the Thompson Corporation audit is here for your final review." Her assistant, a sharp young man named David, placed a thick file on her desk. He had been assigned to her by Whitmore himself, a former Wall Street wonder kid who had initially bristled at reporting to someone with no Ivy League pedigree. That resistance had lasted precisely 1 week, dissolving under the sheer force of Kesha's meticulous, unassailable logic. "Thank you, David, and please call me Kesha." He offered a respectful nod, a faint smile touching his lips. "Of course. Mr. Whitmore's legal team has already pre-approved it. They say it's clean." Kesha gave him the same wry, knowing smile she had once given a billion-dollar deal table. "Let me be the judge of that." As he left, she opened the file. The familiar scent of paper and ink filled the air, a smell that had always meant knowledge and now meant power. Her eyes, trained by years of studying her father's cramped handwriting in second-hand books, began their methodical scan. She wasn't just reading the words, she was listening to the silence between them, feeling for the subtle inconsistencies, the rhythmic offbeat that signaled a hidden trap. Her office was a reflection of her new life, but also a shrine to her past. On the wall hung a framed thank you letter from the director of the FBI, citing her exceptional courage and analytical prowess in bringing down an international money laundering ring. On a bookshelf, amidst leather-bound, legal and economic texts, sat a small, worn photo of her father, Professor Marcus Johnson, his kind eyes seeming to watch over her. And next to it, a brighter, newer photo, her daughter, Brooklyn, grinning a gap-toothed grin on her first day at a new school, a prestigious academy where her intelligence was nurtured, not questioned. The intercom on her phone buzzed. "Kesha, Professor Williams is here. Send him in, please." Marcus Williams entered, looking more like a proud grandfather than a feared SEC advisor. He carried a small, gift-wrapped box. "Come to check up on your protege," Kesha asked, rising to greet him with a warm hug. "Always," he said, his eyes crinkling. "But today, I come bearing a housewarming gift. I know it's a few months late, but I wanted it to be special." He handed her the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a beautiful, old-fashioned magnifying glass with a solid brass handle. Engraved on the handle were two words, interlineas. "Read between the lines," Kesha whispered, her throat tightening with emotion. "Your father's motto," William said softly. "He'd be so proud, Kesha. Not just of what you did that night, but of what you've built. You didn't just get revenge. You built a fortress of opportunity so others don't have to fight so hard." Before she could respond, her personal cell phone rang. The screen showed a number from the Bronx. She excused herself and answered, "Kesha, it's Mrs. Gable from the community center." The voice on the other end was familiar, warm, and slightly anxious. "I'm sorry to bother you at work, honey, but we have a situation. Young Javier Martinez, the one you sponsored for the summer coding program, his family, they're being evicted. His father lost his job, and the landlord isn't waiting." "I know. It's a lot to ask." "Don't worry, Mrs. Gable," Kesha said, her voice calm and firm. "Text me the landlord's information and the details. I'll handle it."